Hi, I'm JP.
And I'm Adam.
I've never seen Lost.
I have.
I'm told that it's good.
I liked it.
I'm told that it made sense.
Sort of.
But we're watching it out of order.
So it definitely won't make sense.
But it might still be good. Since we won't expect it to make sense, we'll still be able to appreciate each episode on its own merits as a 1-hour story.
Sometimes 2 or 3.
As opposed to just a fraction of an ongoing, sprawling, and increasingly complex tangle of relationships, personal stories, mysteries, mythologies, experiments, social dynamics, unnatural disasters, unanswered questions, and hot tropical hookups.
Are you okay?
I'm not sure.
Because you lost me a little bit there at the end.
Well, good, because I've been lost since the beginning. We're lost on Lost.
Welcome everybody to Lost on Lost, The Lost Effect. I am Adam Busher, and I'm his best friend, and he's my very good friend. Say hi, as always, to JP Russell.
Great. Now I have to rewrite my recap because I made that same joke. You shit. I suppose low-hanging fruit. I should have seen that one coming.
That's it. I mean, that was not my first joke, and I didn't like. I was like, that first joke's too cheap. I needed something a little bit better, and I was like, but not that much better.
I thought that was perfect. Personally,
JP.
Yeah.
It's the last episode of The Lost Effect.
Holy hell. Where did the time go?
Time is, like sands through the hourglass and all that. This is our 7th episode of The Lost Effect. Mm-hmm. We've covered several pilots, and then we did one episode where we talked about Nash Bridges and Brisco County. We've learned a lot. We've grown.
Have we?
Hypothetically or allegedly.
I mean, I have a growth, but I don't know if that's a good thing.
But yeah, we talked a lot about pilots the past few weeks, comparing them to Lost, how they may have inspired Lost or been inspired by Lost. This is the culmination here.
Yeah.
We're about to talk about Severance, the pilot of Severance. Good news about hell.
Yeah.
But before we get started, we want to introduce our guest.
Yeah.
We here on Lost want to welcome everybody to the first host optional episode. Welcome back to the show, Lost on Lost faithful, Jack Kelly.
hi. Very excited to be here. I'm fully prepared to turn this into a Severance podcast.
Yeah, I'm just turning my mic off now.
Fully prepared. Okay, I need you guys here because I need people to bounce off of.
Yes.
But okay. I'm the host of this podcast now.
Sounds good.
Refresh everybody, Jack, on your depth and breadth of knowledge of the television show Severance.
Oh, God. What do you want me to say?
Felt like my question was pretty clear.
You had a very interesting way of watching these episodes when they first aired, Jack. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can absolutely talk about that. So when this show started, I think they dropped maybe the first 2 or first 3 episodes at once.
I think it was 3.
And so I watched them and was like, holy shit, this show is incredible.
Yeah.
And then the 4th episode dropped. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, that's amazing. I'm going to rewatch everything. And now also the 4th episode. And then I kept doing that for every new episode, is that I would rewatch all of the new episodes, or I'd rewatch like 1 through whatever the last episode. And then I would watch the newest episode, and then I actually then rewatch that episode and then restart it again from the beginning. So I've seen this pilot so many times because
we call that the 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah, because I think I watched the full, like, I wouldn't just watch it like one time through after the new episode dropped. I'd watch it at least 2 or 3 times in a week. Mm-hmm. So sure. I think I've seen this pilot like upwards of like 25 times.
Nice.
So, which is like, when I'm obsessed with a show, that's like a low end of me seeing an episode.
Jack, you don't hyperfixate, do you?
No, I definitely don't have undiagnosed ADHD.
Oh, okay, good,
Not
good.
at all.
Yeah.
JP, you got a recap for us?
I do.
Let's do it.
Here we go. A job that I can literally disconnect from and have zero memory of? Where the fuck do I sign up? Mark Scout works at an eerie conglomerate called Lumen Industries. When Mark checks into work, his memories are separated into his work and those of his everyday life. Hey, Mark, can you remember where you parked your car? Yeah, me neither. In this episode, we explore the mysterious Lumen Industries as well as Mark's personal life, creating a dichotomy as complex as Mark's mind. Things really get confusing when Mark's co-worker Petey shows up in Mark's personal life with his work mind seemingly intact. Maybe Petey knows if it's garbage day or if it's recycling day. Let's get into Severance.
So yeah, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
The good news about Hell originally aired on February 18th, 2022. It was written by Dan Erickson and directed by Ben Stiller. Dan Erickson got his start on the now-defunct Spike TV's Lip Sync Battle.
Oh, Christ.
Then did some other stuff. Then did Severance.
This is his first show, though. Like, this is his first, like,
Showrunner
created
show. Really?
showrunner show. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Motherfucker came out the gate with this?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Right, talk about peaking early. Talk about peaking instantly. And then Ben Stiller directed the show. He directed The Cable Guy, which is better than people remember, but still not great.
I always forget that he directed that.
Yeah. Directed and starred. He does that a lot. He did that with Reality Bites, like
Tropic Thunder?
Tropic Thunder, yeah.
Man, being a Nepo baby's got to be nice.
Oh, dude, it's so sweet. I imagine.
So where do we want to start? Holy hell.
That's the question. Where to begin?
So my problem is that, I mean, we could do a scene-by-scene breakdown of this. We could also talk for 4 hours just about vibes.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just go.
I'm open to both. We could do both.
Let's go scene by
Let's
scene.
do both.
And
What else do you guys have going on today?
I'm technically at work.
technically, schmecknically. Let's go scene by scene, and we will embrace vibes as they come along.
All right. Severance starts the way all of my work days start, crying in the car.
Doesn't it open in the boardroom?
Yeah, it does. It opens
it does.
It opens with Helly, like, kind of like, or this woman, I'll say, this red-haired woman splayed out, like, on, or she's like, she looks like she was just, like, dropped on the table.
Yeah,
and so,
literally.
And so she's in this boardroom alone, and this voice comes from a speaker and asks her, like, who are you? And she can't answer the question. She can't really answer any of the questions except for name a state, any state. And she goes, I don't know, Delaware.
Listen, hot take, Delaware's not really a state.
It's not. It's barely a state.
It's 3 credit card companies in a trench coat.
Save it for the capitalism podcast. I would say for me the most heartbreaking question of them all that you're like, oh, this is a real fucked up scenario is what are or were the color of your mother's eyes? And you're like, and she can't answer the question, and you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, that's when this went from this could be wacky to oh no.
It's also Britt Lauer's like 100-yard stare that she has when he asks the question, because then like she doesn't answer it, and then very soon after the door opens and there's a figure standing in the doorway, which like we all know is Adam Scott standing in the doorway and just
That's
like
a perfect score.
That's a perfect score. You're like, what?
What is Adam Scott like known for? What's like
Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec.
Oh, see, I've never watched Parks and Rec.
Party
so-
Down. Yeah,
Party Down was, I would say,
okay.
his like breakout role.
Yeah, probably. Because then from there he went to, that's where like his TV stuff got started. He was in Step Brothers.
Gotcha.
That's one of the things I know him from.
Yeah, he's I would say for the most
He's a UCB
part,
guy from back in the day, I think.
but he's known for comedy stuff.
Yeah.
He was in Big Little Lies as well, and that was like his first like really like high profile drama role that everyone was like, oh my god.
But he was also kind of a comic relief character at times. Like he always had like this salty, sassy
Sure.
line and quip, whatever.
Yeah, and so like this, he's just, we have that first intro, and then we cut to him just like sobbing in his car. Like we don't.
I want to talk about vibes real quick.
Yeah. Okay.
The boardroom, like the first shot. So the whole thing at Lumon is the retro futuristic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's obviously 2022. It's set in the present, but everything there has this vibe of like
The 70s.
70s, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I dig it.
But the vibe specifically I want to talk about is how Helly wakes up on the thing and you've got this shot with the carpet and everything's really square and angular and then she's got this elegant business look to her, the nude heels, the blue on blue with the skirt, the blouse. I'm terrified of drowning. However, I would absolutely drown in her eyes. Like you mentioned, the 1,000-yard stare. I normally watch shows with the captions on, but I had to have them on because whenever I looked into her eyes, I went deaf. So visually, they set a tone immediately with the boardroom shot, and then with her, the way she's dressed, the colors of the carpet, the angles, like you said, JP, maybe it's wacky, but then I think there's also that stark sterility to it that is like,
sure,
really, it really sets the tone just from the jump. And creating a visual style in a millisecond is not something any director can do.
Right. Mm-hmm. I really appreciated that, especially the opening shot from the top down, you had time to focus on the weird two-tone, like green-yellow pattern of the carpet, so that when he walks into the lobby of the building and it has that same carpet, it's like, okay, we understand this is the same space.
Yeah.
Both the shots were long enough where you had time to like notice it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. There hasn't been a pilot that I can remember that has used literally every aspect of the viewing experience to create the tone is so completely the way that this pilot did, from costuming to the interior set design to the exterior location shooting, to the music, to the casting. I think one of the reasons, and we can talk about this at the end, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much, because of how complete it is. So
nodding is really great for podcasts. I agreed.
Yeah. But yeah,
this is a podcast.
So Mark's crying in his car.
I've been there. I was there today. I'll be there tomorrow.
I've done that.
It's funny because he sits in his car and he cries. It's sad, obviously, but it's also funny because he like looks at his watch and he's like, "Oh, it's time to go in," and so like he stops crying and goes to work.
Yeah, this was my crying time.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like gross crying.
Yeah,
it's not
the
like
coughs. He does the crying that turns into a cough because you're not really breathing. Like
it's like gross, snotty crying, and like wipes his face with like the napkins that are just like in his car, and it's just like.
That's what those are there for.
Man, this guy is just like, he is depressed.
Yeah.
And then he has to go into work.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the first time he's done this.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, this is at the very least a bi-weekly occurrence. Like, he is doing this at least twice a week.
Yeah. But yeah, so like crying time's over. Time to buckle down, nose to the grindstone, heads into the building. Cold, there's that crisp coldness. And this is one thing I think that's very, very cool about things that do shoot in winter. When the sun's out and the snow's out, and you both experience this being fellow Midwesterners, when the sun is out and it's 30 degrees outside, for some reason the sun makes the air feel colder because of how bright and sterile the white snow and the ice and the water, and it's just like you can see it because you see what you're missing, because you know sun means heat.
You know a better life is out there,
and
it's just not here right now.
You can see it above you, and the heat is just not reaching you, and it just makes you feel that much colder. And that walk from the car to the building was filled with that.
Oh God,
yeah. I know those fucking Australians are enjoying summer or whatever the fuck, and I'm like, you know what? They got all the spiders and fucking snakes and shit. Fuck them. I'm freezing my ass off over here.
But yeah, so Mark, he gets inside, he checks in to the front desk, and then he goes even further into the building, and then he comes to a locker where he
does a full Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, where he takes off his coat, hangs up his coat.
Yep.
He swaps out his shoes, which you're like, well, that's weird. You were already wearing like nice.
No, he was wearing winter boots.
Oh, he was wearing winter boots. Yeah,
so
switches
like
out. So you're like, okay, this is. But then he swaps out his watch.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's a very inoffensive watch that you were wearing.
Right. It was actually pretty nice.
It's a nice watch, but he swaps it out for one that has no markings on it whatsoever. And there's no brand on it. There's no markings on it. It is so nondescript that it's like eerie.
The
And-
watch's character is that it is characterless.
Yeah. And the costume department actually talked about like that's a very specific like Japanese watch that they found that had just no characteristics on it, but it took them a very long time to find a watch that was right for Mark to wear.
If it had less characteristics, it would not tell time.
Yeah. Or it just wouldn't exist. Like it just literally would just not, the watch wouldn't exist if it had less characteristics. And so he puts on the watch and then he checks in at a second desk and he gets into an elevator.
He trades his key card also, which his outside key card has his name and his face on it. He trades it for a key card that's just blue with little Lumon logo on it.
Yes. And then he gets in the elevator and then goes down.
The shot of the ride of the elevator down has, JP, you will probably be able to name what this film technique is.
The vertigo shot.
As he passes the point in the elevator shaft where he goes from, and we're going to use terminology from later, from Outie to Innie.
That's what they call them. It's very fun. They're outside. You don't know this yet in the show, but like their outside persona, they colloquially call the Outies, and then when they are working on the severed floor, they're called Innies.
Yep.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah,
That's good.
And so Mark is one of the member of the severed floor. His outside life is partitioned from his inside life. And so he does not remember crying in the car, being desperately sad. He's arriving at work, but not really, because he never leaves work technically. Every day at the end of his workday, he rides an elevator up. And then the next thing he remembers is being in the same elevator, changing direction.
Yeah, the elevator doors just opening and closing is just all he remembers.
Yep. Like as we're like talking about sort of like the science or the the rules of this universe, I'm like, I joked around about it in my intro. I'm like, man, the part of me that's never at work, I just like drive to and from work and I don't have to experience it. That's great. There's a part of me that's trapped in an eternal work.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel that.
We can talk about that at Not Dinner.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't wait for Not Dinner.
The music, you already mentioned once, Jack, but the music fucking rules in this show. It's so good. There's this very simple, very stark piano, and oh my God, so good.
Because Mark he leaves the elevator and he starts walking down the hallways
Oh my
of
God.
the severed floor. And it's like, you should, if y'all get a chance, you should see like the layout of the severed floor and all the hallways they built for this.
I was trying to keep track. I'm like, is he just going in like
because he doesn't go in a circle.
Pattern?
Yeah,
no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah, and so they built this whole giant like maze of hallways for him to just go down. And you're like, this is such a long shot of him just walking down the hallway, and it's literally like nothing is wrong.
No.
Nothing is wrong. And as you're watching me, you're like, that's the same man I just fucking saw crying in his car, but that's a different man.
He, in fact, reaches into the pocket of his pants and finds a damp tissue. He is confused as to why it is there and throws it away as he's walking to his office.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got a little bit of a cough, and he's like, oh man, my sinuses are fucked up. Like one, because he's probably a little hungover, but two, because he just was open mouth sobbing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a moment later where a different character even says, being like, oh, you look hungover.
You look like shit.
And just no. And he just is like, he's like, and no concept of what a hangover is.
No.
Yeah.
He arrives at his department, macro data refinement.
I love them so much.
A little bit later on, they sort of explain what macro data refinement is. Honestly, I think I'd be really good at that job.
Adam, I hate to tell you this. We already do that job.
Yeah.
That's already our job.
Sort of our job already. Yeah. The place looks empty, but he's actually the second one there. He sort of like, well, he might even actually be the third one there. He sits down and then you hear one of his coworkers, Dylan. We don't find out his name right away, but it's Dylan.
Played by Zach Cherry, who's so funny and so delightful.
You learn to love Dylan.
You do.
When you meet Dylan, you hate him.
Man, because Dylan is...
He's a tryhard.
He's the person who needs to be Employee of the Month every month and is like, and that's like, he's kind of a kiss ass because he just like wants to do the job the best, not necessarily like because he wants the perks, like not because he loves the job.
No.
That's a different person that Mark works with. But yeah, you do learn to love Dylan. So JP, I wouldn't be surprised if you are not a fan of Dylan in this episode.
I'd say I was indifferent. That's like, I didn't dislike him. I didn't really like him. He was.
We've all had a coworker like that.
Yeah.
Like,
it's fine.
Yeah, you're like, okay, like you don't make work miserable, but I'm not going to go out of my way to talk to you.
Right. There you go. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but he also walks into this office, and it's not like a normal office either, because he walks in and it's an enormous room. It's a fucking hall they're basically in. Like, it's huge, but there are 4 cubicles that are all connected to one another on like a central point in the center of the room and nothing else. And it's just like this green carpet, white walls, white ceiling, stark lighting, and that's it. They have a break room, like they have their little like coffee kitchenette
like kitchen nook
off to the side.
But it feels like the concept of like the back rooms. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the. Yeah,
I am,
it's just like total back rooms vibe where it's like someone designed this because they thought this is what a space should look like, but they don't understand what a space should be.
Yeah,
I feel like it's the size of the room somehow is an attempt to combat the claustrophobia that I think people might feel if they were to work in there. Like, it's funny because they always just call it the severed floor, right? Mm-hmm. They don't ever refer to it as the basement of Lumon Industries, or do they?
Well, we don't know if it's we don't know if it's the basement.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like,
could it be upstairs?
The innies have no concept of spatially where they don't understand that they may be like deep underground.
Yeah,
because they have no concept of outside.
No, and there's no windows.
Right.
God forbid.
So,
don't
like,
give these people windows.
Yeah, so it's wild.
Yeah.
A third coworker is here also, Irv, John Turturro. Oh, fuck, I love John Turturro.
He's so good.
So good.
He's so good. John Turturro is just, so he plays Irv, who is he is a true believer of
Absolutely.
Lumen Industries, and specifically Keir Egan, who is he's the founder of Lumen. Mm-hmm. And so like
he was the face on the wall, the Stalin-esque fucking portrait in the lobby of
yeah.
And so, he's the true believer. So like he gets his work done, but it's because he truly believes in the cultish beliefs of Lumen, whereas Dylan is there for the finger traps and the waffle party.
And it like Irv is honestly very like Soviet socialism. He's very Stalin-esque in his the work needs to be done, and if you are ever distracted by anything, what you should be reminded to keep your mind on your labor, and then it'll all be fine.
And praise Keir.
Yep. So. Mm-hmm.
And Mark's just like, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see my friends. I'm happy to do my job. And this job is great.
I'm here to see my best work friend, Petey.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Petey's not here today.
Petey ain't gonna be in today.
It's not the first time he hasn't been here.
No.
It's all right. Sometimes people don't come to work. It's okay.
It is a bummer when your work spouse doesn't show up.
Yeah. Mr. Milchick rolls in.
Played by Tremel Tillman, who's wonderful and has not been in like anything. I was lamenting to Adam before we started recording that I'm like, I looked at his IMDb and I'm like, he hasn't been in enough stuff for me to like go watch him do other parts. Yeah. And so
let's get him on the podcast. Do you think he'll join?
I mean, honestly, but like he's so good, and like Milchick is he's like the enforcer of the floor, kind of.
Yeah, he's like the number 2.
Yeah, he's like he's their supervisor, really, and he's
the type of supervisor that supervises several unrelated departments.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like if Petey was the department chief of MDR, he's like middle management. There's that level above him that's not the C-suite, and that's Milchick. But so Milchick's all about making sure the rules get followed. So that's what he's here. Macro data refinement. Even when Days Petey's gone, needs a department chief. He comes to get Mark, and Mark assumes it's so that he can just fill in for Petey until Petey comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Milchick brings him to Harmony Cobell's office, played by Patricia Arquette. And he's like, as he's walking, it's like, they moved her to a new office. So make sure you compliment her on her new office. She'd really appreciate a compliment. Mark gets in there and be like, oh, I love the new office. She's like, oh, it's awful. Being like, yeah, it totally is.
It's the comedy of this. I haven't seen the show, but this episode, it's so good. But if you're not actively paying attention, you are going to miss it.
Yeah.
But it's this episode is very funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. is
but
phenomenal.
in such an intelligent way that I really appreciate. Like it's not for yucks. It's like Edgar Wright's style of comedy where it's like, no, you have to be paying attention to fucking appreciate how goddamn funny this is.
Right.
Yeah, it's really satirical.
Yeah,
like it's really satirical comedy. Like your supervisor telling you to compliment your boss on her new office is like a thing that everyone's kind of gone through in some way, shape, or form. And then you get in there and she's just like, I just want to complain about it.
It's the coworker haircut, which I do all the time. It's something that I've learned, and I if people don't do this, this is my free advice to you. When you notice that your coworker has gotten a haircut, be like, "Oh, I see you got your haircut. How do you like it?" See what they say. Respond in kind. I don't know. It's kind of crooked. Well, I think it'll grow out. Or I love it. It looks great on you. Very simple. Hey, Miss Cobell, I see you got a new office. How do you feel about it? It kind of sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what he does. He's like, oh, yeah, terrible.
No, I always do the opposite. I'm like, are you pregnant? They're like, no, something's different. Haircut? That's it.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Yeah, so the Mark sits down, Miss Cobell. Is it Miss Cobell or Mrs. Cobell?
Ms. Cobell.
Ms. Cobell, yeah. She's like, Petey's no longer with the company. You're being promoted. The board is joining us remotely. She pulls out a speaker similar to the one we saw, sets it down on the thing. We hear a little bit of static, and then she goes through the whole thing. Gives Mark the skinny, you're the department chief now.
He gets an ID card identical to his current ID card, which might be the hardest I laughed.
Yes.
I don't know if it's identical.
It's identical.
I don't think it's identical.
It's just less worn.
Is that why Mark notices the difference between the two of them when he puts it in? It's just that it's newer? Okay.
Yes.
Because I was like, yes, it is identical, but there's something different about it that Mark notices later when he leaves work.
Yeah. It doesn't
newer.
have like the edges rubbed on it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he's now so his best work friend is no longer at the company. And that's a bit of a shock for Mark.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite know what to do with himself.
Yep.
But he's the new department head, I guess.
And his first responsibility is giving the orientation survey to P's replacement, or technically Mark's replacement, since Mark has been promoted. Helly's coming to replace Mark.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can tell he's jazzed about it. He's like, oh no, I can handle this. Like, hell yeah, a promotion? This is great.
Hell yeah.
They're like, can you handle this? He's like, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so they go to this small room, and I say they because that's Mark and Irv, because Irv has to basically supervise because he's the old guard. He's the one that's been there the longest. Seen it done. And so he's training Mark on how to do the orientation. Yep. And of course now we're seeing it from Mark's perspective, and it's like a choose your own adventure book.
It's a fucking binder with like, if they say this, turn to page 12. If they say this, turn to page 14.
Yeah, and so you see Mark actually like kind of panicking during this because he has never done this before, but we've heard him earlier, and so like he is talking to a hostile audience. And
apparently she should not be freaking out. Like Irv makes mention of like that nobody ever acts like this. Like why is Hilly so? It's out of the ordinary for her to be behaving the way she does.
Yeah, and so he eventually like he goes in and says like, you got a perfect score, and like goes in and like sits with her and is like, okay, we're gonna go over more things, and she's like, I would like to go now, please. Like
there's a moment in which he's having a conversation with her, just talking to her, trying to like calm her down or something like that. But like he goes back to the book to like go back to the script, and she throws the speaker at him. And it's
just yucks it at him.
That was such a good one. Just like, I
think it's all she's got.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so eventually, because she gets to a point where she's asked twice to leave, that he's like, ask me one more time to leave.
It is in the binder.
Yeah, it is in the binder. And so that's when she goes, I would like to go now, please. And he goes, okay, I'm so sorry that this didn't work out for you. I guess
let's get you out of here.
Let's get you out of here.
With the thumb.
with the like choose your own adventure thing, it's like if we're looking deep into the lore of this space, like this has been done so many times that they know every conceivable combination of things that people could say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The only variable that they haven't accounted for is somebody as hostile as Helly was.
Right, yeah.
Which is interesting.
So Mark walks her to this hallway where there's an exit sign and a door, and he goes, okay, you can leave. And she's like, are you not following me? He's like, I'm not allowed to watch.
Not allowed to watch.
And so he waits around the corner while she exits, but then is immediately comes back into the space.
And I wrote a joke here. he's not allowed to watch her leave, but he loves to watch her walk away, or something. Like I didn't have time to polish it.
Let's go with the or something.
Or something, yes.
Yeah, we'll stick with that.
But you can see like in the window of the door that there's stairwell.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it is a place. Like it's not just like a weird, but we just keep seeing she opens the door and then she's immediately turned back around.
From her point of view.
From her point of view, that she's still in the hallway and she like can't figure out why she's just not in the stairwell.
Yeah.
And it's so baffling. And she's like, what the fuck is happening?
It's like walking into an IKEA. You know, you ever try to take one of the shortcuts in IKEA and you just like walk through one of those little hallways and then you're just like, I'm back where I started. What's happening?
From Mark's point of view, her exiting is not instantaneous. He doesn't look. We just have we have this cool shot of him up against the wall, down the hallway to the end of the thing. Hell, he goes through the door, sit, couple seconds, minutes, whatever, and then she comes back in. So for Mark inside, it's not instantaneous. For her,
right,
trying to leave, it is instant.
Which tells us what is happening on the severed
how the
floor.
innies experience leaving and arriving at work.
It's just the thing that I deeply appreciate about this pilot especially is that they do such a good job of introducing you to the rules of the Severance floor. And so it's like you are just like, you're watching, I mean, an orientation is such a perfect way to introduce the rules of this new world. Like you're literally taking a character and be like, let me show you around. But like, and even in this instance, you're seeing, it's like Mark not showing her how the chip works.
No.
He's not showing her how the severed floor functions, but she is learning and we're learning with her in how she's just trying to leave. And it's just like, and none of it's like fully explained. Like there's no dialogue exposition, which is so nice. Like that the show trusts the audience enough that we will understand what is going on.
We're not going to tell you the rules.
We're not going to tell you the rules.
We're going to show you the rules.
Yeah. Here are the rules.
Because this is television, and we should show and not tell.
I have so many feelings about that too.
Gonna treat you like adults that want to be here and watching this. If you don't get it and you don't like it, fucking go watch something else.
Truly, it's amazing.
Go watch Coach with Craig T. Nelson.
Mrs. Coble, we cut to Mrs. Coble helping explain Severance and orientation to Helly. Mark is getting a Band-Aid from Mr. Milchick.
I love that the Band-Aid's also got the blue logo on it. Like
the Lumen logo,
Everything is Lumen branded.
Yeah. It's very Dharma-esque. Mrs. Coble dresses Mark down a little bit. Are you mad about your disobedience or your incompetence?
Yeah.
And then her just
line.
Yes.
Yes.
She's perfect.
Her line reads are so fascinating.
Oh my god.
And they're so funny at times, but they're perfect.
Yeah.
Where's the emphasis in this line? Yes.
I will say one really fascinating thing that really like pops out, you know, just in the way that we even talk about this show is that like you have like Mark, Helly, they're also referred to as like Mark S, Helly R, Irving B. But they referred to as like their first name and their last initial, but all of their superiors are referred to as like Ms.
Mr. and
Mr. and Ms.
Right.
And it really like also sets this weird tone. And so it also sets this weird separation between the supervisors and the employees.
Right.
That you don't understand. You're like, why is she called Helly R? Right. Like, why? That's so like.
And why doesn't Mark S become Mr. Scout when he gets promotion? Like, why is a department chief a supervisor but not high enough to get the honorific as opposed to the first name, last initial?
Very true.
Sure.
Interesting. There's one more part to orientation. Helly receives a video, a little DVD that she needs to watch, and then her orientation will be complete.
I wanted it to be like a VHS so bad.
They return to macro data refinement, and Mr. Milchick pulls out a TV cart like in high school.
Fuck yeah.
And pops in the DVD. So Helly watches a little video that she has made for herself about 2 hours ago, give or take. And she explains and this is sort of the expository dialogue. Severance. The severance procedure is not only voluntary, but it is irreversible. You, Helly, have chosen to do this, and there's no going back. Sorry. This is fucking. I think this fuckers up a little bit.
Yeah, well, she looks so happy to be doing it in the video. Like she looks like she's so excited. And then now here's this like primal version of herself that has no context, and she's like mortified.
Yeah, she has no memory of making this video, even though it just happened apparently this morning.
She did not give consent. This other version of herself did.
Consented to this process. So she's kind of fucking depressed and like spun out, whatever. She heads over to her desk, and Mark says this thing, which is, again, is just sort of an extension of that. Every time you find yourself here, it's because you chose to come back.
Yeah, that's so fucking interesting.
But Heliar didn't choose to come back. Heliar can't leave.
Right. Yeah. Oh, dude. Yes. Yes. That's such it's so much to wrap your mind around, or minds.
And that's the workday. Mark heads home, heads to the elevator. 5:15.
I love that we see inside the elevator. Like, there's no mystery of like, what happens when he's in the elevator? We just see it.
Yeah, it's just an elevator.
Just gets like a quick ice cream brain freeze, and he's back in it, or out of it.
And it's like a reverse, and it's the reverse vertigo shot where like they just do another one, and you literally see like the exhaustion back on his face from earlier in the day before he stepped in the elevator. And so he's now just exhausted and then goes home.
Exhausted, fucking miserable. Like,
we also learn another rule of the severed floor is that he gets in his car he gets to his car and there is a note on his windshield, and he opens it, and it's a note from Lumen that's like, you were involved in an accident today.
You stepped on an overhead projector slide and slipped and hit your head.
Yeah. And tells him, and being like, and so then he like feels his face and then like feels the Band-Aid and is like, oh, and they're like, and here, so we're sorry for this. Here's a gift card for Pips.
Pips VIP.
Pips VIP.
Yep. You're a Pips VIP.
You're a Pips.
Pip.
I'm a Pips VIP.
Oh, Lord.
Very
That's
funny.
amazing.
But he then gets in his car and he starts to drive out of the parking lot, and he almost hits Helly. And she's like, watch where you're going.
The two, and they do not recognize each other.
Do not recognize each other. And that's when we learn another rule of the severed floor of like, they do not even know they work together.
That's why they stagger their exits.
They stagger their entrances and exits, which is so fucked.
Yeah.
Mark drives home. He lives in a subdivision called Baird Creek. I don't think we find this out right this second, but it's a company town. The whole fucking place is owned by Lumen.
Right. Well, we can see later that he can like see the office.
Like it overlooks the building, like his house. Yeah.
Yeah. As he's cleaning out his gutters. I've really seen this too many fucking times.
I gotta clean my gutters this weekend. God damn it.
Man, the perks of renting.
He comes home, has a beer, does some other just like after work shit, watches a little TV. Does he cry again? He probably cries again.
Yeah.
I think he's just getting drunk.
Well, I mean, first one thing leads to another.
Yeah, because he drinks
and then he cries.
He like alternates between drinking beer and drinking whiskey.
Yeah,
but
which people who are well don't do.
Yeah, you can just.
I thought there was even a bottle of wine in there while he's watching TV.
I think he drinks wine.
But you can just tell that he's drinking a lot, and he also like watches TV with no lights on and like just like in the dark, and you're like, this man is broken.
Yep.
There's something wrong with him that he should probably be seeing a therapist about.
Right.
There's a knock at the door. His sister arrives to pick him up for a dinner that he forgot about.
Yes, his pregnant sister Devin, who's delightful, played by Jen Tulloch.
Yeah, she's so good.
I'm obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with their dynamic as siblings, because they're some of the the few siblings on TV that genuinely feel like siblings. Yeah. Like the way they talk to one another is so genuine.
They both have similar childhood trauma that they're aware of the others.
Yeah. And they like the way that they also like joke with one another and like talk to each other is just, it's so lived in and so comfortable, but also just like very teasing and very fun.
Yep. Incredible sibling chemistry. She takes him to not dinner. It's a dinner party. Dinner. It's a dinner party being hosted by her and her husband, Rickon, in which no food is served.
Oh, I didn't quite get that they were married. I was trying to figure that whole situation out.
Yeah,
I was like, did they?
Yeah, Rickon and Devin.
Yeah, Rickon is the father of her child.
I missed that. Sorry.
But yeah, it's Mark and three other couples
Well, they're friends. Like, I don't think there are other couples. I think they're just friends.
Okay.
But they're like, they're just all like the most insufferable fucking people you've ever met. It's like if they didn't call it not dinner, they'd be like, well, it's a salon where we discuss like the most important thing. And I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill somebody.
Yeah, it's just, you guys are just sitting down and talking, and you're not having dinner, but it's fucking dinner time.
But they're also like talking about being like, not having food here has really like elevated the conversation because we're not focused on the meal itself. We're just focused on the conversation.
Yeah.
And it is just like Mark is having the worst time.
Right. Because he's like what you're describing is cocktail hour.
Yeah.
You're describing the hour that we have drinks before we eat dinner, and then we eat dinner. So I'm drunk and hungry, and I have no distractions from all of y'all, and I want to stab all of you to death with my own face.
Yeah.
So insufferable. They during the conversation at not dinner, Severance does come up. They talk about what Mark used to do. He used to be a history teacher. His late wife used to be a Russian literature teacher.
Yeah, Mark very specifically taught World War I, which then they pull out this stupid thing where they're like, did you know that they actually thought it was
the Great War?
It was a faux pas to call it World War I, and so they just referred to it as the Great War. And Mark's like, well, yeah, you wouldn't call it World War I because World War II hadn't happened yet.
Yeah. It's the whole reason why Die Hard is not called Die Hard 1.
Right. That's what I always call it.
Well, yeah.
The thing that I was trying to figure out, I'm like, are they doing this as a joke to just show how insufferable these people are? Or is this part of this show's world where, like, the general public has become this dumb? You know what I mean? Like, is this an everybody problem or just these people problem?
I think it's a these people problem, to be honest.
Like, the rest of the outside world in Severance is odd, but it's not as insufferable as this dinner.
Yeah, it's not like this. But they're really insufferable. And I think it's really to like prove a point that like this, because then they start talking about Severance and talking about the Severance program, and Rickon outs Mark as a Lumen man whose work is so sensitive that he had to have the Severance procedure done. Once again, we still don't know what Mark exactly does. We don't know what microdata refinement is.
Yeah. Something with numbers.
Yeah, something with numbers. But, so then that becomes like a weird conversation.
You see, data at a macro level needs to be refined.
Well, it looks like he's just playing like a Sudoku puzzle.
If you don't refine the data at a macro
man. Yeah. But they start talking about Severance. And you learn that it's actually a very controversial procedure because, as we hinted to earlier, it's an ethical dilemma.
And it's currently the subject of congressional hearings.
Yeah.
They do mention that there's the congressional testimony and stuff happening regarding the not only ethical and moral part of Severance, but the legality of it.
Well, and they're also like, oh, it's a pharmaceutical company. No, they're like a biotech company. No, they're just like a computer company. Yeah. It's like they're in it. What aren't they into? You know,
they're everything.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're an everything company. And so like just like discussing kind of the ethics around it of like, oh, well, the person that works there is just left there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, how does that person feel? And it's like, well, we've already seen how that person will feel.
Right.
Some of them are fucking fine with it.
Yeah, some of them are okay with it, and some of them are mad. They're big mad that they are down there. But it's just like, it is nice that the show also like is like, okay, well, here's this like sci-fi, we created like a sci-fi thriller, created this technology in our world. And you know what? In the first episode, we're going to address the ethics of this and that this is a questionably ethical thing that this company is doing. And that's part of the story is the questionable ethics, that they're just not like, well, this is just like some wacky story where they're,
right. You get to the end and it's like, Soylent Green was people. It's like, okay.
Yeah. But it's like, I can imagine some people like immediately starting the show and being like, well, this
That's
is
fucked up.
This is an ethical nightmare. I don't think I could do this, but it's like the show
Sure.
being like, no, it's okay, babe.
Yeah.
Like we know it's an ethical nightmare.
Yeah. We've written an ethical nightmare and we're aware of it. What are we talking about?
We're not asking you to choose. We're just asking you to be along for the ride.
Yeah.
Exactly. Dinner goes pretty poorly in general.
Yeah, we also learned that Mark's wife died.
Yep.
A couple years ago.
Yep.
And we also learned that from the car ride from Devin picking him up that we're around the anniversary of her death as well.
right.
So
Yeah.
it's a particularly rough time. So we understand like, oh, that's probably why Mark was crying in the car.
Right.
And like it's like, oh, this man is grieving
Yeah.
and he is not coping
No.
and he is drinking himself to death
Yep.
every night and then coming in hungover and crying in the car, and it's like he is not doing well, but at least when he's on the severed floor he can do his job and he is
Right.
just a completely different person, and it's like you understand why Mark agreed to be on the severed floor.
And,
Right.
and then the unintended consequence of that decision, Outie Mark doesn't remember the 8 hours where he was not thinking about being sad. Outie Mark is sad all the time now. The escape that he hoped to get from Severance, he does not get to experience the escape. So his day is now just 16 hours of sadness.
Yeah.
He has no memory of forgetting about the sadness.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, it's like, we call taking a nap in the army time traveling, right? Like you're not actually time traveling.
Right.
Your brain's aware of the passage of time in some capacity. You're just not getting to like benefit from being unconscious.
Right.
And it's like, the thing is, it's like, it's so depressing because you see how sad he is in real life and how seemingly successful and good he is at his job when he's the innie.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, he must understand at some level, like, I must be at least competent at this job because they continue to have me there and I keep getting a paycheck. But yeah, he's not able to derive any of the joy of it, and the time that he gets away from having to think about work, he's not filling with anything else. So he's still just totally unhappy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you do see a little bit of life in Mark, especially when he talks to Devin.
Totally.
Because like after not dinner, they're in the kitchen and Devin's making them a sandwich to share, which is very funny.
Yeah. He's drinking from a flask.
And he's drinking from a flask, and like
She doesn't even comment on it. She's
Nope.
like, yep,
yeah, and
that's what he's doing.
And so he ends up staying overnight, and like look, Rickon is like truly like one of the comedic reliefs of the show, which like God bless him. And so they like have him stay in the baby's new room, or like the room for the baby,
the nursery / bedroom /
yes.
Right.
But they have this whole thing of like well, they're saying that it's actually better to have all of the beds the child will need in its life available to it so that it can make the decision as it
can sort of grow into its new beds at its own pace.
Yeah.
And will not have a childhood safe place ever ripped away from them by being forced to go from the crib to the race car, from the race car to the regular bed.
Yeah, but unfortunately for Mark, the regular bed is not ready because Rickon is still making the sheets. And so he now has to sleep in the race car bed.
Wait, did you say half the race or gets to sleep in the race car bed?
Yeah.
It's just so, and then like, I don't know, Mark and Devin also have this like wonderful little moment when they're like, when Rickon and Devin are leaving the room and they just, I don't know, it's like one of those like cute little like sibling moments where like Mark goes to Devin and goes, good night, my lord. And she goes, good night, my lady. Yeah. And it's just like, that's so cute. That is absolutely a sibling bit that they've been doing for years. And and it's like, and that to me, it's like those little moments that I'm like, these are siblings.
But does it serve the plot? No. Does it serve character? Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
We don't, the audience don't need it explained to us. It's explained in the observation. We saw it happen. It's like, oh, that's all that. Yep. That's what it is.
That's delightful. And a lot of the scenes, especially with Mark and Devin, no spoilers for the rest of the season, but like as the plot progresses and things get weirder, shocker, things get weirder in this weird world show. that you come to really appreciate that like Devin is one of the few people that Mark can truly trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like these moments where it's like they do have these like little lighthearted moments where it's like they are so deeply comfortable with one another that they can tell when something's wrong and they can
Right.
tell when like they know each other.
Yeah.
And so he
Right.
trusts her, you know, later with like important information, which he should.
Yeah.
She is his sister and she is, you know, she's the one that like after the not dinner, they confide in each other of like, God damn it, that was so dumb.
Right, that was
Like,
really dumb.
Yeah. She's immediately making the sandwich. She's
Yeah.
like, I am so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
And they're able to have this symbiotic relationship without being codependent too. Like Mark,
Yeah.
obviously Mark's life would get worse if he didn't have the relationship, but it wouldn't fall apart completely by her absence. Like he would find a way to
Right.
soldier on.
Yeah.
And she's trying to help him, but
Yeah.
she's not going to try and mother him.
Right, exactly. She's gonna sister him,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is good.
Right.
And some of that is bullying him into coming to terrible dinners.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
like, I'm just going
Right.
to get you out of your home. This is going to be an awful experience for both of us, but like,
But at least you're not sitting in the dark drinking.
yeah. And instead, you're going to be sitting at my house drinking.
Yeah. So
But while Mark is at their house,
Yeah. Holy
he looks out. He like looks out the window, and there's just this disheveled businessman
Yep.
standing.
by your car's extended warranty.
Just standing in the yard, and it is like, and he sees him in like the headlights flashing down the street, and then he's gone.
Yep.
And you're like,
Oh, hey, nightmares.
yeah, and you're like, is he hallucinating this man?
Right.
Is this like something from the severed floor like breaking through in his brain?
this is he has brain leaking on itself.
What is happening?
Yeah.
And then the next morning, he's like, I saw a businessman in your front yard. Devin's like, I'm sorry?
Middle management or higher up?
Management or higher. So good. So good.
Well, you're up early. Oh, I was just processing the trauma of having my childhood bed taken away from me too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Her being like, you've been sitting on that for a while. He's like,
Yeah.
real proud of that one.
Yeah. Mark heads back to his own place. Yeah, cleans his gutters, whatever. Cashes in his gift card. Goes to dinner by himself. Heads over to Pips.
Pips. Please
Yeah.
put some respect on it. It's
Goes to the VIP
Pips.
section. He's the only one in there.
Which the VIP section is just like a sign that says VIP section.
Yeah, it's literally just part of the
same.
yeah.
I went to a strip club once that was like that, where the VIP section was just a table with a little fucking piece
Sign.
of paper and said VIP section. It was the grossest place I've ever been to.
God. Yeah, he's at Pips and he's on the phone with his neighbor who he keeps talking to because she keeps putting her bins on his side and like not remembering like what is recycling,
Listen, I
what
have
is
a neighbor
trash
that does
day.
that, and I'm ready to commit arson. Okay.
You heard it here, folks.
Yep.
If JP's neighbor's
God
house
damn
burns
it.
down,
They literally put them so I cannot fit my car in my garage. I literally threw their trash can across the goddamn alleyway once. I was so mad.
as
Won't
is your
you be
right.
my neighbor. Mrs. Selvig, you get the impression that she's just this doddering old woman that she's whatever, barely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's just got this tedious neighbor that
Yep.
he's got to put up with. And I'm like, man, she would also lead me to drink. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah.
But while he's sitting there on the phone, the disheveled businessman sits down across from him and he says a phrase that Irv said on the severed floor, which
Right.
is, hey kids, what's for dinner?
Tells the audience everything we need to know. Right?
Yeah.
Like-
And it's like, Mark doesn't know this phrase.
Yep.
Holy shit. And then he even says like, hang up the phone.
Mhm.
And so he says one of the, sorry,
It's
Mrs.
so-
Selvig, I have to go. They've cooked the dinner and now, or they cooked the food and now it's here. And then it hangs up, which is such
the
a
level of detail.
It's such a weird sentence. And I can't get over it. It's so funny.
It tells you that Mark has talked to her enough times on the phone to know that if he doesn't explain why he's hanging up, she's just gonna call back.
Yes. Yes.
For me, it's the specificity of they've cooked the food
They've
and
cooked
now
the
it's
food.
here.
That thing that happens at restaurants.
They've cooked the food.
God.
But he hangs up and we find out from, like, he learns from PD being like, hi, we work together on the severed floor. And that's where we get the phrase of like, well, how do we know each other? Be like, I'm your best
I'm your
friend.
best friend.
You're my
You're my
very
very
good
good
friend.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Which is also so clearly a joke between the two of them.
Yeah.
Right. It's so fascinating to me that Mark is so, because he's so depressed and he's so wrapped up in his own shit, I get the feeling he contemplates his existence on the severed floor so little that he's never really contemplated that this could happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this idea of like somebody being like, oh, you know everything about me? Yeah, sure. Like this has not fucking crossed his mind once because he does not fucking care. It did not give him the respite he was hoping for. And now it's just this thing in his life.
Well, for all Mark knows, he could be the only employee on the severed floor.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He's
totally.
never seen one of his coworkers.
Or he could be one of thousands.
Or
and
he
he
one
would
of
never,
thousands.
and he would never recognize anybody from work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Ugh.
Petey is apparently undone the irreversible severance thing, and he is paranoid that he is being chased by Lumon, specifically somebody named Grainer.
Mm-hmm.
Grainer could be watching them right now, and so he's like, he gives him the card at dinner, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he gives him he's like, here's a this is for you. It's a little greeting card, and then he leaves.
Mark reads it in the car.
It's
Happy birthday, niece.
Happy birthday, niece.
You're like,
You would have made an awesome niece.
an awesome niece. It's very funny. Be like, I had to grab something that was not suspicious, but I think you'd be a pretty awesome niece.
Yeah.
It's such a good line.
But it's also like, you know, as we were saying with like Outie Mark's relationship with Devin, you can tell that like Petey has that level of joking with any Mark.
Mhm.
And like, because
Right.
we, you know, it's like, because Mark has a sense of humor. Like Mark is funny.
Yeah.
Like he likes being sarcastic with his friends and joking around.
Totally,
yeah.
And it's like, and Outie Mark really doesn't have
No,
that
well,
because
he's
he's
soaked, you
so
know, he's-
depressed and like, and still so deep in his grief. And like, and then any Mark, he's just, his best friend is gone. And so now he's got, you know, the two insufferable coworkers and then now a very hostile coworker, and he
Yeah.
can't do that right now. And so like we get to see with Petey that, oh, Mark, just his base personality is that he likes to joke around and that he likes to have these fun in jokes. And we just, and so we get that with Petey in that moment. And it's just so, it's so nice to see that somebody else sees Mark, even if that's a different version of Mark than Mark understands who he
Right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Within the card itself, Petey, he gives him the option. He's like, hey, if this interests you, there's an address in the back. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
toss the card and never
Yeah.
think about it
Yeah.
again.
If you want to find out what's really going on here.
Yeah, it's on Half Loop Drive.
Yep, Half Loop Drive.
Half Loop is the title of the second episode.
Second episode.
Yeah.
Mark drives
I
home.
wonder where they go.
Mark drives home. The cans are not correct.
God
He
damn,
deals
dude. I
with
got
them.
so fucking mad when I saw those cans there.
little did you know that this was going to be such a triggering show.
Fuck, man.
And as he puts the cans away and he gets ready to go inside, but then Mrs. Selvig shouts, just, oh, hey, Mark, sorry about the cans. I got confused.
And you don't see her face.
Nope.
And you're like, okay, but that voice
Sounds
sounds
oddly familiar.
Oddly
and not
familiar.
just because we just heard it on the phone.
Right.
But we've heard it somewhere else.
Yes. And then finally we get a reverse shot from Mark's perspective, and Mrs. Selvig is Harmony Cobell. So he's living next to his boss. And he does not know.
They hold on her face for so long, and the way she releases her smile is so gradual and takes so long, where it's like, I don't know if she's putting up an act and she knows stuff outside of the severed floor, or if she's just a nutball in real life who would then just continue to stare over at Mark's house. And I was so creeped out and so uneasy by it. And I'm like, dude, this show beats ass. It's so good.
Yeah, because Harmony Cobell is like on the severed floor is like a hard ass. Like she is
Right.
like so clean cut, cold, like just like there's nothing friendly about her. And Mrs. Selvig is like in like home knits. Like she's wearing like
Right,
a home knitted hat that's very colorful, and like she's very friendly, and like, you know, she's very different. And so you're like, is she also severed?
On the severed floor, during Mrs. Coble's dressing down of Mark, she tells a story about how her mother was an atheist, and she said that there's a good thing about hell, in that it's just a figment of a rational human's imagination. The bad thing about it is that humans can usually make things they imagine real. Mrs. Selvig says something to Mark as she's saying goodnight to him, that her mother was Catholic. and that it took 8 hours for the saints to bless the children. That's why they needed to sleep at night. So when Miss Cobell is telling the story about her mother being an atheist, it's like, oh, she has memories of somebody outside of the floor. She must not be severed.
Right. I didn't even think about that.
But then here at the end, she tells an entirely different story about her mother, and it just layers the mystery.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of Catholic guilt that one mom can lay on a child. So
This is correct.
Well, I just love that Mark's reaction to both is just like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah. In both instances, he's like, well, I don't get it.
He's like, okay, thank you.
That's neat.
I'll give him some extra time tonight, Mrs. Selvig.
Oh,
I'll
man.
see you later.
Yeah.
And then he goes inside, and then Patricia Arquette has that slowly melting smile. And then the episode does end.
It's so good, and I am fully prepared to talk about the next 8 episodes after this.
Buckle up.
I truly I cannot express how much I love this show. I just think that it is Adam Scott's best work.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I cannot.
He puts just dramatic performance.
I cannot wait for you to see some of his stuff in some of the later episodes. There's a moment where I literally I've seen it so many times as we've established, and yet I still saw it once and then rewound it and then watched it again yesterday because it is so good.
And yeah, this was your 27th time seeing this episode, and it's still as good as it was the first time. Rewatching it for this was, I think, my 4th time seeing the pilot. And yeah, I've probably watched it it's getting close to 2 years ago that it came out. We're still waiting for season 2 to come trampling through. But it's been probably about a year since the last time I watched the pilot. And so I was sitting there and seeing these things, remembering certain moments, and then re-experiencing these moments that I had completely forgotten about. And I was just, I haven't seen a pilot this complete in all aspects. Complete pilot, visually, orally, set design, casting, chemistry. It everything was fire. I was like, how can the show get better from here? And then it does.
And then it does, and you're like, what the fuck, guys?
I don't know. It's not that good. I watched Better Off Ted at half speed, and it's about the same thing.
I was going to say, JP, this is your first time ever seeing the show. How did you feel about it?
That was great. Yeah, I'm gonna binge the rest of it. Adam and I talked after I watched it. I'm a big fan of the video game Control.
Yeah.
And this has similar vibes, just more firearms. And
in control.
Yeah. And I'm hooked. I'm gonna finish the rest of it hopefully this weekend. So
yeah, it's just they're. Oh God, I just have no words with how impressed I am with this show.
It's so cool in that it is a workplace comedy. It is a satire. It is also a satire.
Mm-hmm.
It is a genre show. It's a puzzle box. It's blending all of these genres and fucking nailing it.
It's a capital M mystery.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I also love this show and why I watched it the way that I did is because we would get one more episode and they'd be like, what the fuck? And you'd have to go and rewatch the episodes before it because it would answer some questions but give you 12 more, and you're like, what in the shit? And and they did such a good job with the cliffhanger, because they also with the whole season, it's because they left so many questions unanswered, and so they're like, we're not going to give you everything. We're going to have enough in our bag for a season 2 that you're going to want to come back because there's enough questions that you're like, what in the fuck was that?
I think that brings me exactly to my sort of wrapping up thing here that I want to bring up. So all of our other Lost Effect properties, sans The Prisoner, are loosely related to Lost in some way, shape, or form. We established The Prisoner was such a groundbreaking thing for the time that we had to talk about it because it clearly influenced Lost. Here we are watching another non-Lost property that is clearly heavily influenced by sort of the road that Lost paved. And I feel like there's so many lessons learned from Lost and then all the mystery box things that have come since. And then we've learned all the lessons and now we get a show like this.
Yes.
You know, now we get something where it's like, find a flaw. Tell me what's wrong with the show. Can you? No, because we figured it out.
Yeah.
They figured out the formula. They did everything right.
Jack, thank you so much for coming over and taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was so jazzed when you texted me and was like, hey, do you want to come talk about Severance? I'm like, I would absolutely love to come talk about Severance.
My phone vibrated so hard when you replied. I was like, oh.
You could feel my personal vibration through the phone. And I was like telling everybody, I'm like, I'm so excited to get to talk about Severance on my friend's podcast.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so fun. It's always a delight to talk to you guys.
Yes. Well, we love you, Jack. We love your energy. We love this fucking show. And for the fans out there that want more Jack Kelly, much like James Bond, will return on Lost on Lost. So,
always. I will be back. Whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Adam, tell the folks at home, what the hell are we watching next time?
Oh man, like I said at the top, this is the last episode of The Lost Effect.
Closing it out big.
Coming up in a couple weeks from now, we're going to be going back to just classic Lost on Lost content. The premiere of season 4 of Lost. Episode, The Beginning of the End.
It's where you find out that Sawyer is pregnant with Jack's baby. And that's the mystery.
Our featured character is Hurley.
What?
I thought it was going to be Jack. I thought Jack was always the featured character of the first episode, but our featured character is Hurley. And yeah, that's what we're going to be watching. Season 4, episode 1, The Beginning of the End.
Well, all right, start strong. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right, Jack, thank you again. Adam, thank you. Folks at home, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Lost on Lost, The Lost Effect.
Thank you, JP. I'm Adam.
I'm JP.
Do you have any idea what has been going on the past 10 weeks?
No,
12
but I'm
weeks.
scared and horny.
14 weeks. However many weeks this took. So am I. I'm also scared and horny. That's as good a sign off as we've ever done.
Nailed it.
Lost on Lost is produced and edited by me and JP.
We wish to acknowledge that we live, work, and produce our show on occupied land.
Burbank, California is located on the traditional tribal lands of the Tongva, Chumash, Kizh, and Fernandino Tataviam peoples.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin is located on the traditional tribal lands of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Miama, and Ho-Chunk peoples.
And Lost was produced in Hawaii on the lands of the Kanaka Maoli.
Visit native-land.ca to learn more about the land you live and work on.
You can engage with us on IG, Facebook, and Twitter at Lost on Lost 1.
You can also email us at wearelostonlost@gmail.com or support us with dollar monies at coffee.com/wearelostonlost.
Thanks to Lostpedia and its community of contributors, Danny Schmitz, random.org, and as always, you the listeners for tuning in.
We're hosted at Podbean. You can hear us there or wherever you get your podcasts, except MySpace. We're not on MySpace.
Yet.
So,
Are you all done pissing there, piss boy?
wow.
For now.
This boy.